President Trump signed an executive order day one to give the Department of Justice and the Defense Department the job of looking into the possibility of designating Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs. Now, what that does is it opens up a whole range of possibilities that gives the US government the legal ability to do things that it doesn't otherwise get to do. It would allow them to go after financial organizations that provide banking services for FTOs. Any company that does business in Latin America or the United States that ends up willingly or involuntarily doing business with some of these FTOs, they can go after them and sanction those companies. But it opens up the possibility of actually dropping nasty surprises on people. And the Trump administration has been sending a range of aircraft over Mexico for the first time. Surveillance aircraft that can pick up an incredible array of signals intelligence and visual intelligence on the ground. Right now, it's clear that we're just gathering data on these cartels. But keep in mind that these aircraft can be used for targeting missions. So there's a three-step process that the U.S. military goes through when it is targeting bad guys called find, fix, and finish. So they are looking for the bad guys now and starting to separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to their signals intelligence and visual intelligence. They're making lists of people who are naughty, checking it twice, sending it through for approval, prioritizing those target lists. Those guys were flying up and down the border, but they did not cross into Mexican airspace. And not crossing into Mexican airspace kind of was the point. This is what has changed. Now we have aircraft actually crossing into Mexican airspace. This is kind of a big deal. Now, it would be great if we could see actual strikes against cartel targets in Mexico. Now, most likely, because Mexico is an ally, we would coordinate with the Mexican authorities, at least in the beginning. One of the things that I think people who know Mexico, like Jaime Zapata, who was a former DEA agent, who was an undercover guy in Mexico, he'll tell you, the government is hand in glove with the cartels. So if we alert the government of what we're about to do, there's a good chance the cartels will get alerted and they will clear out. Or it even could put our troops in danger. So because of that, if the first time they can't hit the target because the target gets alerted ahead of time, the second time they probably will not let Mexico know they're going to do it. They're just going to start dropping bombs. What's Mexico going to do? They'll complain, they'll whine, and there's not much they can do, really. All we have to say is, hey, if you would take care of this problem, we wouldn't have to do it for you. Now, let's take just a moment to talk about some comments that were made by Tucker Carlson on his network. I almost called this live Answering Idiots, Tucker Carlson edition. But I feel bad about that because Tucker Carlson claims to be a Christian, and I once respected Tucker Carlson as a journalist, but he has been so taken away by Russian propaganda that he is now literally spouting Russian propaganda as if it's fact. I say that sadly, but Tucker Carlson is completely and 100% sold out to Russia at this point. I put up an article about this on chuckholton.com, so you can go and watch the video there. I was going to put it up on YouTube, but they would probably demonetize me for that. But Tucker was essentially saying, well, everybody knows that the Ukrainians are just stealing all the money we're sending over there. And if you go to Europe, everywhere you go, if you go to resorts anywhere in Europe, all you see are wealthy Ukrainians who are coming in and literally spending $1 million an hour. That's what he said. Carlson went on to say up to 50% of all of the weapons that the United States has sent to Ukraine is being sold on the black market. Much of it to Mexican drug cartels. Now, it's hard to know where to begin with that statement because that is just so unbelievably wrong. It's not even a maybe. It would be impossible for that to be the case. Why? Well, first of all, if you go to the U.S. Bureau of Political and Military Affairs from the U.S. Department of State, they will show you a list. This was put out the day that Donald Trump took office. And it's a summary of all the weaponry and money that's been given to Ukraine since the beginning of the war. And they claim it was $69.2 billion in military assistance. There was more than several billion in humanitarian assistance on top of that. But it shows exactly what weapons, actual U.S. weapons, were given to Ukraine. And if you scroll through there, a lot of it is air defense weapons, Patriot missile batteries, NASAMS, National Advanced Surface Air Missiles, Hawk air defense systems, 3,000 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, etc. Then you go down to more than 100,000 1.155 millimeter artillery rounds, and the 777 howitzers that fired them, more than 700,000 mortar rounds, more than 50 multi-mission radars, 31 Abrams tanks, 45 T-72 Bravo tanks. Did you know the United States had T-72 tanks? More than 300 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, more than 400 Stryker armored personnel carriers, more than 900 M113 armored personnel carriers, and so on and so forth. If you go back through this list, these are not pistols and AR-15s. The vast majority of the stuff we've given them are very large weapon systems. They're the kinds of weapon systems that are going to be very difficult to sell out the back door in Ukraine, not to mention the fact Ukraine desperately needs every single thing that we've given them and more. Ukraine is trying to survive as a country right now. And I have been there. I've actually tracked this weaponry from the Polish border all the way to the front lines in Ukraine, personally tracked it. The stuff that I was tracking definitely got where it was going, out on the front lines. I've asked the troops on the front lines every time I've ever been out there, are you getting the stuff that the United States is sending? And they all say yes. Now, a lot of people are asking about the interview that Volodymyr Zelensky gave to a female reporter the other day, where she asked, well, the U.S. has given $170 billion to Ukraine. Where is all that money going? And Zelensky was like, I'm not aware of $170 billion that we've received. We've received $77 billion total from the United States. So I don't know. And then everybody has made that out to be like, oh, Zelensky just admitted that there's $100 billion missing. No, that's not what he said. He said, we've received $77 billion. Well, if you go to this report that was put out the day Trump took office, it lines up pretty close with what Zelensky said. It says that the U.S. has given $69.2 billion in military assistance in the last 3 years to Ukraine, and the rest of that $77 billion was humanitarian assistance. Even if Ukraine was putting its own existence at risk by selling American weaponry out the back door, and somehow was able to secretly move it all the way across the ocean to Mexico, the Mexican cartels wouldn't know how to use this stuff. And the first time that they tried, that would get picked up by American or Mexican government censors. If that stuff starts popping up in anywhere, Burma or Middle East or someplace, we're going to know, and that's going to come down on Ukraine. And Ukraine knows that. Now, it's really unfortunate that somebody like Tucker Carlson could be so taken in by Russia. And if you go back and watch the videos that I've done recently on propaganda, on how Russia is trying to influence American politics through propaganda, that was just a couple days ago on my live. It's unbelievable that somebody like Tucker Carlson, who's been a journalist for a long time, and people that are in his orbit, like Candace Owens and people like that, can be so taken in by the Russian propaganda. It just makes me think somebody's paying them. They got to be making money on that. And if they are, that would be treason. There's a line where you go from being an unwitting idiot and a pawn of the Russian government to a paid shill for Russia. And when you cross that line, you become a traitor to America.